Hey everyone, it's Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the show where I talk to other writers and we have a good time chatting. It's been over a year that I've been doing this. This is pretty cool. I'm having a good time. It can be a little stressful, trying to book people, trying to make sure I understand who they are. And you never know how your personalities are going to mesh. You don't know if their expectations of the show is going to be different than what you've outlined. You never know. But and sometimes right before I start the interview, I'm kind of like tired. I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be, and every time I start talking to these people, I get energized because they're so interesting, and we almost always connect and have a good time. But really, it's a learning experience for me to hear about how other writers think and how they approach things and what their worldviews are and how they've changed over the years and how it's informed the stories that they tell. And I was excited today. In particular, I talked to, and I'm going to butcher her name, and I should have asked her how to pronounce her last name. I'm going to go Erica Ferencik. Ferencik. So I'm really sorry, Erica, if I screwed that up. But I'm just going to refer to her as Erica. I spoke to Erica today, and Erica is a thriller writer, a very successful thriller writer. And she's got 3 books out right now, but she's got a long history of different experiences in the arts, from painting to different types of writing. And she got her creative writing degree. But one of the reasons I was really interested in talking to her is because she was a comedy writer for quite some time, and even had some jokes that Letterman took. So and I'm such a fan of comedy, and I love studying the structure of comedy, and I really think there's a huge relationship between writing comedy and writing thrillers in terms of pacing and cadence and knowing when to pause. So I love talking to her about how comedy and writing comedy has informed her ability to write thriller novels. So that was great. Plus she was funny as shit. So we had a really good time, and we made up a really weird little story based on Mario Puzo's The Last Dawn. But Erica's new book, which is getting tremendous reviews, is called Girl in Ice, and it looks phenomenal. So I hope you enjoy. This is my conversation with Erica Ferencik. Thanks. Nice to meet you. How are you?
So nice to meet you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. I just was shoveling snow, so now I'm a little winded.
Jealous. Where do you live?
I'm just outside of Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, nice.
What about you?
Well, it's climate changey northeast. It's 70 degrees, and we expect a foot of snow on Friday. So
Oh. That's exciting. Well, you grew up in upstate New York, right?
I did.
Whereabouts?
Tri-City area, Schenectady area.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of snow there.
Lots of snow there. Yeah, I went to school in upstate New York, and my sister and her whole family's up in Ithaca. So.
Oh, nice. Where did you go to school?
Cornell.
Cornell, nice.
And my niece is now graduating from Cornell, and so I might go back there in May to see the graduation. So yeah, so I love upstate New York. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, I like to leave where I grew up just for various reasons.
Yep.
But I stayed in the Northeast because I do love it. I do love snow, and I love the change of seasons, and I feel an affinity for this place. So Canada's calling. Wouldn't mind.
Yeah, that's the next step. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I was happy to get out of, I grew up in LA and, went to school in New York. And then since then it was just, I've been all over the place. And I think it's great for people just to like migrate and just go
Yeah.
and experience
Yeah.
something else. And it just
We're
informs.
Americans.
Yeah. It just informs so much of how you kind of move on with your life and international travel, all that stuff. But I'm always amazed about the number of people who don't do that. They just, I still have a lot of friends in the LA area who just are probably within, 20 miles. And that's nothing against them at all, but it's just, I had kind of a wanderlust, growing up for sure. So I
Me
love to
too.
move around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you travel internationally much or I mean, probably not recently, but
Not recently. Well, for my 3 books, I've traveled to, the river at night. I can talk about that whole story, but just for my last 2 books, for Into the Jungle, I went to the Peruvian Amazon where I stayed for a month to do research for that book.
wow.
And then, for Girl and Ice, I spent, a little over 3 weeks in Greenland doing
Wow.
research for the book. Yeah.
So are you, and we'll get into this more, but just off the bat, are you a research junkie or you're just like, it'd be kind of cool to go to Greenland?
I'm very, for me, it's about, I love to travel, but that's separate from what I'm trying to do with these books. And for me, the story comes first. And I was just asked in another interview, did you get the story well in Greenland? And no, I got the story in other ways, which I can talk about. Going to Greenland, in fact, I had a first draft of the book before I even went to Greenland. But any of these trips I go on with a full roster of knowing what I'm looking for, what I need to learn, who I need to talk to, what I need to ask. At the same time, trying to keep myself really open for the experience,
Right.
for everything that I can, hey, and I love it. I'm no martyr,
Right. Right.
I'm not, oh, poor me, I have to travel for this. And
that's
of course I don't have to.
You don't have, yeah. And I think that's what's so interesting. I talk to a lot of different writers and we talk about research quite a bit. And I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum where I don't put myself in a situation where research is, the cornerstone of my book. That being said, I will research where, it needs to be credible, but that's the whole fine line, right? It's like, at a certain point of like, all right, I can write it like this without going to Greenland and it'll be fine. But if I go, it'll be that much better, but it's also kind of cool to go. so I find that people who like to research really enjoy that, whether they use it all or not, they just enjoy probing. And it sounds like,
you don't know what you don't know.
Right. That's true.
And if the idea is, especially in my books where the setting is so crucial to the story.
Right.
Like, I gotta go. It's not, I can't imagine the book. I think the end product would have been very different than if I didn't.
Oh, I'm sure. So just going back, so you're growing up in upstate New York and you have siblings.
Yeah, sibling, one brother. But the older you get, the less interesting it is where I grew up. I mean, I just, it's like it feels so distant. It feels so far away. But that we all gotta grow up somewhere. That's
so you don't have family still there that you go back to?
No, my family has all passed.
Okay. What were your parents doing when you're growing up? Where did kind of the creativity gene come from?
Probably my father. My father was a nuclear physicist, and he was also a fine artist and a champion tennis player.
Wow. That's a Renaissance man definition right there.
And my mother was a jazz singer. So
wow. All right. So
no,
you
not
definitely
a jazz
had
singer.
But you had the arts in your history for sure.
Yes, and I grew up, I'm studying fine arts and I was a painter into my mid-20s. And like literally I woke up, I was 26 years old and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I have no interest in being a fine artist. I can't express everything I want to express with paints and canvas that I feel like I can express with words. So it was a really sudden shift. Although, of course, I have been writing all my life and, recreationally. I guess.
Right.
But
you,
then
so
being
you,
much more directed,
so you went to school for fine arts, and then
I did.
as
I got my
you're,
undergrad. Mhm.
what is the thought process after you graduate and you're doing that up until the point that you kind of pivoted? Were you, trying to get placed in galleries? Were you trying to see, how do I monetize my passion?
Oh yeah, all those things, all the monetized things. I tried that. I did portraiture. I did have shows in galleries. But you got to sell a lot of work
Sure.
to live. And I went from, I just decided, well, this just isn't doing it for me anymore. I literally like painted my last painting and put my stuff away, and I started to concentrate on my writing, which it just felt like the right thing to do. I really did. And I started right away with novels. I didn't even give it.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, like there was no like, I'll write a poem. No, it was like novels. And my skill level did not match my enthusiasm.
Well, it never does, right? Because there's a learning curve.
Does. It's a learning curve. So I started out writing novels and into my late 20s, and then if they didn't happen, put them in the drawer. And then I got my master's in creative writing from BU. And that was just the beginning. I mean, really, the journey, 35-year journey.
Yeah.
Really.
And you're talking to somebody who has no background no educational background in writing. It's all self-taught for me. So I'm always interested in people.
Yeah, but you're flying.
But it's lots of practice novels.
Well, yeah.
So getting your master's in creative writing, did you find that like, oh, wow, this really, sets me at a new starting position that would have taken me years to get to if I was just doing it on my own? Did you really get an enhanced experience out of getting that degree?
Well, this is a podcast, so folks can't see my face.
Oh, no, they can see this as well.
Oh, they can see. Oh, they can see. Oh, so I thought this. So for some reason, I thought this was a podcast. Well, so you can see my face.
It's available on all platforms.
Good thing I put some lipstick or whatever. But this is not casting an aspersion on Boston University, but I felt like it was great. It was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what I needed to learn. And the biggest thing is I learned a lot. I met some great people. It gives you a feeling of legitimacy in this world that is so judgmental about these kinds of things. And so I regret nothing, but
what do you mean it gave you legit? Like, do you feel like without that degree, it would have been tough to call yourself a writer?
No, not at all. I was calling myself a writer the day I put my paints away.
Oh, nice.
Well, I wasn't, I just hate the word aspiring. You are what you do it. And then it is true. I mean, we do get the question, you call yourself a writer. Oh, have you written anything I know? There's so much wrong with that question.
I don't know what you would know.
Who are you? What do you know?
Right.
Anyway, it's such a horrible, it's like the word success. I hate that word. It's like,
are you successful?
Are you successful? And it's like, you shouldn't use it on yourself or on other people.
100%.
Because
yeah.
It's like, how do we define I define success. Did I get out of bed in time for my interview? Oh,
right. Am I generally happy in life?
That's right. Did I write some dialogue that I think is good? Did I hand in a piece to a contest on time? Fine, great, success.
Right.
But it's a crap word. So legitimacy. I just wrote a piece called 11 Lessons from a Cranky Old Novelist. 11 lessons on writing from a cranky. And my editor changed it because you can't say old and you can't say cranky. But I feel that. I feel I feel cranky. And this light's very flattering, sort of. Not really. I bought.
You're good. You're good.
I'm good. Because before that I looked dead. I'm like, oh my God, talk about girl and ice. Holy shit. But anyway. Truth to the trade, still learning.
So you you pivot to writing, which you've been doing for quite some time. You wrote some novels, but you're still having the internal struggle that you had, I'm sure, with art, which is, how do I monetize this?
How do
Because
I monetize this?
selling writing is not, leaps and bounds easier than selling, fine art. So you still have to produce a lot.
So I'll give you some sort of the decade year upon year review. So got my master's, wrote a few more novels that didn't go anywhere. Said, screw this, I'll do stand-up comedy. I know it doesn't exactly follow. And then I did stand-up and comedy and wrote sketches for 10 years. And then I, for many reasons, stopped that. But that kind of overlapped with a big screenwriting period where I thought, okay, I must be a screenwriter because I'm obviously not a novelist. So I started that road, and it taught me so much. It really taught me structure. I mean,
I'm sure
it was the best experience.
But I want to go back here for a little bit, because
of course,
one of the reasons I'm particularly interested in talking to you is I'm a huge comedy fan. And I almost wore my Letterman shirt today for the interview. I truly believe there are, extensive parallels between comedic writing and novel writing and even thriller writing, where learning, really the cadence and the timing is so critical. And I, for sure, it's like that in comedic writing and screenplays, obviously as well. But so what was your experience like doing stand-up? Because I'm also obsessed with just kind of comedians and road life and just kind of those stories. And it's so tough.
It's a brutal bitch of a thing to do. And
particularly as a woman, I would think.
Yeah. And then, funny you should say, way back then, I mean, you're introduced first by your gender, and now we have the female comic, like,
oh wow,
like they couldn't tell by looking, and so here's the freak or whatever, because it was 9 guys and me a lot of the time.
And are you on the road, or are you like in Manhattan?
Oh, look, New York, Boston,
and
then Maine, like these long drives to these places where, like, you show up and you just see like a sign that says comedy tonight, and comedy is spelled COMIDY.
Right. We have a chick tonight.
And there's a chick spelled CHIK.
Oh my God.
And you get a real bad feeling. And then you go in the bar and everyone has their John Deere cap on backwards and they're watching TV and they're like, 10 sets of eyes. I mean, so yeah.
But then you transition to comedian to staff writing. With like,
okay, we're talking ancient history here. So this is back when Letterman was paying $50 a joke.
Oh wow.
Okay, so when I say I literally wrote jokes for him, mailed them in the mail, got a $50 check.
Nice.
But never heard my joke being spoken. Now, I didn't hear every show, but other comedians are doing the same thing. Like, well, we don't hear our jokes there. We get the $50 was a lot of money back then, and it was a great, a great feeling. But yeah, comedy is terrifying. I learned a lot about how to deal with fear, my own fear of being on stage, and it took me a while to learn that comedy is a conversation. It's obvious. Is that obvious to you? That it's a conversation between
I think the best comics
and the audience
make it a conversation.
Yeah, but I mean that almost like rhythmically. A comedy, a comic says a joke, say the punchline, and after that punchline, if you don't wait for a response, they'll eat you alive.
Right.
Because that's a sign of respect to wait. When I say something to you, I'm going to not hopefully talk over you. You're going to.
Right. It shows the comedian is listening to the audience as well as the audience listening to the comedian, for sure.
And it also betrays a sense of confidence on the comedian's part that they actually are fucking funny.
Right.
And so you won't believe it, but it's it took me a while to learn that. I would say joke after joke, and I would, even if people were laughing, I would, and I was pretty funny and they were laughing, but I would talk over that. And a comedian would pull me aside and say, you just need to wait. You just need to relax up there. I'm like, relax, or you could, so, and that was a big, big learning moment.
But how informative, right? Because I mean, even I do a lot of public speaking, and it takes a long time to get to a place where you're like that same thing. Wait, breathe, relax. You're speaking faster than you think, this and that. It's so important. But when you do all of that, that it gives you tremendous confidence in all aspects of your life, not just being up there, in how you present.
I like that. That's so true. I never thought of that.
I think everybody should
transferring to real life.
I think everybody should go through public speaking training. I mean, I think it's, I mean, I know for some people it's horrifying, but when I went, they actually would just tear you down. and they'd say, okay, give us an improv speech for 5 minutes. We're going to record you, and then we're going to show you everything you did wrong. And it's horrifying, but if you just let yourself be in that moment and be completely vulnerable, it's so informative. So then you're 10 years of comedy writing. Are you like in staff rooms, writers' rooms? What kind of situations are you in?
No, I'm literally writing my own jokes, and creating 5, 10, and half an hour sets, and running all over New England doing performances, and wanting to go to LA. And actually I did reach a point where, like, what I really think would be great, because it would, kind of like the painting. It's very restrictive. You're telling jokes. Okay. And yes, you can be incredibly creative, but I still didn't feel like what I was doing was expressing. I mean, I was coming from novels,
Right.
What I wanted to
it's just very long form.
Yeah, not a lot of jokes. Well, and so, but that around that time, around year like 9.5 is when I met my husband, and he had children, and I married him, and here I am, 20 years later. So, I mean, life does things to you. And, but so I never ended up going to LA to do that. Came back though and decided, well, novels are really my jam. Well, after doing screenplays for many years and figuring out I'm not collaborative.
I'm not either.
I'm not. I don't care what you think, or you, or you. I mean, really.
I mean, that said, I haven't done a lot of collaboration, but I know myself, and I know, like, I like to own this. I not necessarily the plot, but I like to own the emotion. And I think if I wrote with somebody else, it would have to be like, okay, you take this point of view, I take this point of view. And I would like that. I think I would enjoy doing that, because then I'm just responsible for, one point of view, but I've never done that.
It takes a very special relationship. I won't say I didn't write the original screenplay, but I did work with a comic on a screenplay, and we rewrote it together. But that's a rare meeting of the minds.
Right.
Not something I want to do all the time.
Yeah.
But I guess
I agree. And so, but it's interesting to me. I mean, so I'm assuming you get this question. This doesn't surprise me, but I would assume a lot of people would be like, oh, but you wrote comedy, but you write all this dark stuff. How does that mesh? I totally 100% get that. I think you can be the funniest person in the world and be very capable of writing some really fucked up thrillers that have zero comedy in them.
Think about jokes. Every joke that is actually funny has a dark core.
Oh my God, yes.
That's why it's funny.
The darker, the more uncomfortable it is, the better.
Yeah. I mean, jokes that have sweet little cores are not funny. They're for children, maybe. I don't know. I mean, but comedy is the darkest. It's just angry. You're up there. You're just pointing out what's pissing you off about the world or your life, or it is very dark.
But you still have to, like you would with a protagonist in your novel, you can have somebody who is very dark and who's very angry, but they still have to be I don't have to connect with that person,
Right.
but I have to have a reason to keep wanting to read about them.
Oh,
Just
sure.
as if you're on stage, if you're just spewing vitriol, after a while, I'm going to get bored with that, right? So there's
That's right.
that
Because we're
balance.
all angry, right? We're all angry. We're all pissed
Right,
off. We're
right. I
all
came here for an
disappointed.
escape.
Why is that funny? And then that's totally the process of writing a joke. It's like, yeah, so that sucks some particular thing, but so what? Why is that funny? I mean, having the initial thought of the joke is just the first step. So the initial observation, and then you have to think about it. Why is it funny? And are you the right persona through which this joke is even funny?
Right. And then once it's
different.
written, it's a lot of it's about how do I tell this?
How do I tell this, and where does it fit in my set list? Does it have anything to do with anything else I say?
Right.
I used to have these complex ways of remembering jokes that had nothing to do with each other. Just remembering your jokes is really hard.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And then sometimes just a word can make a difference between a laugh and not a laugh.
Yeah. Or a pause.
A pause, an intonation.
Right.
A tilt of the head.
Right.
No pressure.
Right.
Very typical. But I think in novels, I mean, there's a lot. Humor in novels is what makes it feel more real, just a little. I mean,
right.
It's part of life. Part of life.
Right. Right. You don't want it to be distracting, but if you have a character who's capable, who has a sense of humor, particularly, almost gallows humor because they're in a really shit situation, that can be fantastic.
Or just like self-deprecating, or here's this insane situation, which is kind of funny, but underneath it, there's a really dark core. What's really going on? And because the reader is always like, well, what's the world? I mean, what is the world that you're giving to me as the writer, as the reader? I need to know where I am. What are the rules, in the world? Writers, we all know this, but I would think if it's set in in a pretty normal world, there's got to be just touches. It also helps the tension. It releases a little tension. It's a big sort of trick with horror, because what you're doing is you do a little laugh, maybe a little scare, and you're like letting off this tension in the balloon as you're going to this giant, terrible, scary thing.
Yeah, and if it's constantly terrible and scary, again, it gets exhausting and boring. After a while, you get numb to it, and you're like, all right, this is the stakes aren't meaningful to me anymore.
Right.
But
repetition kills.
Totally. Yeah, but that's again, that's thousands of words that you have to write to even come close to starting to understand your voice, your cadence, that tension release, and getting all the feedback that you need to get, and being able to know which feedback to judge correctly.
True.
It's so hard. It's so much work.
It's so hard. And I would just encourage everyone to just be nice to yourself. I mean, you're a different writer in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s and 50s and beyond. And you may produce something that you put in a drawer that later just becomes your opus. You don't know. But again, it goes back to that horrible word, success. It's like, redefine that word for yourself every day. I'm ahead of successful today because I'm here with you.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Seriously.
Yeah. Like this is what, I know. And I struggle with that a lot. I struggle with the idea of success. And I think that's common across all industries. Right.
That's right.
But, it's like, well, how do I define being a successful writer? And you're just like, well, you have one book published. That's way more than almost anyone. But it's still hard to say, like, okay, I'm not making, hundreds of thousands of dollars off of this one book. So so it is.
My car is still 20 years old.
Right. But still, giving yourself, you're totally right. Giving yourself a break, putting things in context, being grateful for whatever you've achieved.
Right. And vetting the feedback. Who is telling you What?
Right. Right. And you
And
know, after a while, the voices like I always listen to this one person because they resonate with me. This other person, they're great helping me with X, Y, and Z, but not kind of the overall message
yeah,
what I'm trying to go for. And sometimes the only person you should be listening to is yourself because it's
exactly.
you're
That's what I
doing it for
tell.
yourself.
That's what I tell my students and other writers is if you hear something that you just, as you said, do not resonate with, um, then say no.
Right.
Because if you don't listen to that tiny little kryptonite hard core of yourself that got you in all this trouble to begin with, you will be lost. That's why you're here.
Right. And that also speaks to, I think sometimes it's very easy to go down a path where maybe even in during editing, you're writing towards voices that aren't yours.
Right, because you
And
admire them so much. I know.
and then
I
it
think
gets
that,
and then it gets disingenuous and then it's not as fun because to me,
right.
right, because I don't know, I don't outline, so I don't know what I'm doing. So when I sit down, as hard as that is not to outline, it's this joyful world that I get to escape into a little bit every day that I don't quite know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's exciting for me. And if it was like, okay, here's the formula for this book,
Uh-huh.
I would
I'm
hate
in
it.
admiration. I'm an outliner. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
I'm not smart enough to keep it all.
I see. I feel the exact same thing about outlining. I'm like, I don't know how you figured that all out. Like, because it to
Well,
me,
you're figuring it out eventually. You're
you're
just
figuring out.
figuring it out in your own way. And I don't like doing 20 drafts. I'm not saying you do, but I don't
Yeah, I don't do
I
20
like to
drafts,
move
but
on. Like
yeah,
so you
I mean,
can't, but I like it.
I
I
do
like
think I think that there's a lot of beauty in the editing, and that's such a skill that's taken me a long time to try to figure out to know because I get impatient as well. I'm like,
sure.
and but that's why I love getting like true editorial notes and realizing like, people who are in the industry reading it and saying this, that, and you're like, wow, you're totally right. It's going to be a huge amount of work, but it's
Right.
I see how this is going to make this a better book,
Yeah.
but they have to be a really trusted agent for you to,
Really trusted.
and
And
there's
not
only a
because
handful of
they're
those.
right. Well, I look at editing. See, I look at editing as just, how you're coming up with a story and you're total, like what you do, you're totally into it. You're just lost, right? I think you have to do that times two in the editing room.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
can't just say, well, I'm gonna change a couple words here and, maybe move that paragraph. You have to do the intense mental work of I have to do it anyway. Uh, load up on your vitamins, find a go to where you write, put aside the time. It's as if you're writing it again, or just to go and to visualize it and to feel it and hear it and all the things.
Right. It's that moment of opportunity. It's like when it's like getting into a fight with your spouse. It would be easy to just say everything's fine and
It's a
and
perfect
shut down,
analogy.
but it's not going to go away. I mean,
You
it's
sound like you have experience with it.
well, I mean, because when I'm editing, I have to
Yeah,
really challenge myself to say, like, okay,
yeah,
what is the point of this chapter? How can I
right,
make this sentence better? Because it's so
totally.
easy to be like, that's fine, it's fine, it's flowing,
Yeah,
it's fine. Like, no, you have to really be
no, it's
honest with
not
yourself.
fine. Yeah,
And that doesn't mean you have
yeah,
to change
and
everything, but you have to
yeah,
challenge yourself constantly because if you don't, you're not solving the problem. The
you're not
problem is
solving the
still,
problem.
but you still have a pissed off spouse who's not talking to you because you didn't have that conversation. A
Yeah,
really
you have
weird
to go back and
analogy.
say, all right, why were they angry? What part did I really play in this?
Right. So editing is
I,
like marriage, is what I'm
I
saying.
guess I might have played a part.
Right. Maybe some of it was
I
me.
did throw the hot cup of coffee at the okay. No.
So now that you had several novels that never went anywhere. Were those all kind of thrillerish, darker novels as well?
No, they were some dramatic ones. Actually, one was a thriller that I'm still not going to give up on, that had supernatural elements,
Hmm.
that I still love and I still feel has legs. Really just some embarrassing stuff, man.
Sure. Yeah. By
Really.
default, all
Well,
I have.
literally, I don't. I didn't know what I was doing until I started writing screenplays, and I had structure slammed into my head.
Right.
I wasn't paying attention. I thought,
That's
oh,
another reason you outlined, by the way, is because you have all the experience with screenplays where it is so structured and it's got to be 120 pages and you
yeah,
really got to plan it out. You can't just be
yeah,
willy nilly with that.
yeah. But it has helped with books, so I can't imagine just writing. Man, that must be kind of beautiful. Must be kind of a beautiful feeling in many ways to just. I mean, like, let me just put it. I am, as much as I outline, and I outline for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
My outline for my first book was 90 pages. And in it, but I say in it were character studies, not just dialogue, all this stuff. But I really did need to know what was happening on page 284 to set it up on page 20. I needed
Yeah.
to know that.
Yeah. And I'm like, 284 comes, I'm like, oh shit, I got to go back and put something in 20 at some point.
No.
Yeah. I do that a lot.
I'm older than you are. I have less time.
Not much.
To do shit like that. I don't know, man. Oh.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but I talked to some people who are like, yeah, I had to cut 70,000 words and put in another 60. I'm like, oh, that's exhausting. I don't,
but it is exhausting. I'm sad to hear that. But I mean, I just want to just say that with all the planning I do and outlining, there's a lot of freedom. Once I get in there, there's freedom and that's when I really can set my mind free, because I don't have to worry about all the other stuff.
But do you ever get to that
sense?
point? I'm just wondering, like, so you've spent 3 months outlining, and say you're writing now and you're halfway through and there's like a pivotal scene and it just occurs to you like, oh no, this is what happens, but that's going to fuck the rest of my outline.
Well,
but it's such a better idea. Do you run into that at all?
Carter, funny you should mention. It's happening now as we speak. No, it's like I talk a good story, but my next novel, it's like plan. And I'm a third of the way in, I'm like, this is just not, something's up.
Right. And you have to face that. You can't, right.
And as soon as this book tour is over, I will face it. I swear, I have to.
Oh,
I will, but I don't have the headspace to do it now.
Well, you might not have, right.
It looms, Carter.
That's the name of the book.
That's a great.
But I think that's a very wise thing to say, is there's 2 stages, right? The stage 1 is knowing something's off. Mm-hmm. And I just had this conversation with somebody else, but the second stage is not saying I know how to fix it immediately. Just having the confidence to say, like, I know I can fix this, but I don't have the answer right now. And that's okay. Because that can be very stressful to be like, it's wrong. And I have to fix it immediately. No, sometimes you just have to let it breathe, and you let that sense of it being not quite right be on your mind for a week. Because sometimes it'll just click of like, oh, this is what it needs to be. And I struggle with that because I thought. Well, I always struggle with that because I'm not a very patient person and I want to fix things immediately and be done with it like you. Yeah. But I do find when I let it kind of simmer for a while and be uncomfortable with it, that things will kind of come to the surface that surprise me.
That's right.
But I'm not good with that. I'm still learning that.
And it's so funny because the book you think is like, this is gonna just fall out of my head, like in like Zeus or whatever, in the perfect form, because it's like, I've got this, and then you're like, whoa, I've given birth to some freak baby, and I just like don't know what I did.
Yeah, well, there's the life cycle of writing anyway, which no matter how great the book potentially is, you hate it by the time you're like 90% in. You're like, this is a heap of shit and I don't like it. And I'm embarrassed to show it to anybody, even though it could be great.
Remind me, Carter, I'll send you later, or maybe you can put it up somewhere. There's a visual representation of that. It's like there's this, how the book is in your head, and there's this beautiful woman with flowing dress, and she's holding a falcon, and then next to that is a little sort of chunky little girl, and there's like a dead bird. But anyway, it's like the difference between how you think it's going to be, because it feels sort of exalted in your mind. You even feel the emotions. But then, it's just it's the artist's dilemma. It must be through with paintings and, dances and,
Yeah, I guess. But for me, it's like I'm putting a year into writing a book. So it's like when I, how I release it to the wild is giving it to my agent. She's the first person who fully sees, and my partner as well. But waiting like 2 weeks to hear back from my agent, just with it's terrible. It's so stressful.
There's not enough alcohol in the world for that.
Right. And especially if you're like deviating a little. Like my last book deviated a little bit from and that was the conversation I had with her. And she's like, I'm reading this from somebody who, says a Carter Wilson novel always has this. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's not like that. And I don't know what to say about it, but this is what I wrote. So hopefully, but yeah, it's hard because you can get a little pigeonholed sometimes.
Well, yeah, I mean, my worst nightmare is to write the same damn book over and over again.
Right.
And as much as even if one book did really well and they kind of want the same thing again, they don't want the same thing again. They want the same success. And
yeah, but it's
a weird place to be.
It's a struggle because I think personally I go too far on the other end, trying too hard to write something because I write only standalones, and I just love new worlds, and there might be a little bit of crossover, but I kind of buck against the idea of a series, and I don't have anything really against it. And God knows I'd be more successful probably if I were writing series.
Yeah, I hear those are really successful.
Yeah,
they do well,
And I just haven't found that person in my books that I'm like, I really want to spend a lot more time with you.
I am so done with my characters after. Yeah, ready to move on. Yeah, totally. I know these series that are like 21 books or something.
And again, no slight to them. I think that's fantastic. And that's also, that's in demand. It's not like people are complaining about it. People are reading that and they want it. It just doesn't resonate with me. And sometimes I wish it would.
I know. Why can't I do the thing that makes money? My father used to say, everything you do is really hard and takes forever. I'm like, yeah.
Right. What's the point otherwise?
You had a physicist, and it really, he's like, yeah, but I make a living. Okay, you have a point.
Well, there's the whole business side of all of it. And that's the other, because I have a business background. And so I'm fascinated by the industry, and I'm always trying to learn about it. But it is, even I had a conversation with my editor saying, like, do you think I should be looking to write a series, just from a business? She's like, I think you would hate that.
Well, she didn't answer your question.
Yeah, no, she called me out. She's because it's true, but that's also the reality of it. Like this is a business, and there's a market, and there's a team that you're working with, and it's not just about you and your preciousness all the time.
But yes, exactly. But you could start a series, and that could bomb. There's no guarantee.
Well, that's the other frustrating part of all of it is like, if you kind of pitch a book, they're like, well, I think this could be one of a trilogy or whatever. They're like, well, we don't really want that because we don't know if this one's going to sell well, that we would want 2 more. So it's this whole catch-22.
It's a catch-22.
Like, where do I have to be successful enough already to be able to pitch a series that, a publisher is going to buy, I think. So, if you're just starting out, I think that's pretty tough, unless it's just, it hooks them immediately. So,
because what if you have to follow through? You're like, well, I didn't really plan out the other 2 books. I'm just talking a good game.
Right.
It's kind of like a television series that takes off, and they're like, oh my God, we have to create 5 more seasons. But
Right.
in our backstory, there's no, there are no legs. We have to. Didn't that happen with a series? What was it? The Lost World. One of the really early series. It became unbelievably popular, but they hadn't built in the scaffolding to
Right.
take it out. And it was kind of funny. And then they did it, and they got a lot of blowback because they started contradicting stuff they'd set up in earlier shows and pissed people off, and
Well, that's the fault. That's the fault of the American public too, because Americans demand 5 or 6 seasons of something where, the Brits will say 2 seasons, you figured it all out. You told a person that. I love limited series because I think that 10 episodes of some beautiful tragic story.
Totally.
I think I would love for any of my books to be like a limited series. I think that would be a dream. But
know when to exit, stage left,
Right.
Like, we love you. Bye.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna wrap up pretty soon, but we've got a little storytelling to do. And this is the fun part of the show.
Okay. Well, I've been having fun. Anyway.
So I've got 3 books that I just kind of chose more or less at random off my bookshelves. And you're going to pick a book and then pick a page number and pick a sentence number. And we're going to use that sentence to start just a very short story where we're going to alternate.
Like
verbally. Yeah. Okay. So we just go back and forth. So it's very improv, very, very improv-y.
All right.
But it's always fun to see kind of, speaking of collaboration, how the 2 minds work.
I'll work with you, Carter. Okay.
So I have John Case's The Syndrome. Read it a long time ago. Mario Puzo's The Last Dawn.
That's great.
Follow-up to The Godfather. And then actually Julie Clark, who I've gotten to know a little bit, her new novel, this doesn't come out till June, but a thriller, The Lies I Tell. So pick one of those.
Oh, I get to pick one?
You pick one of those books.
Oh, the Mario Puzo.
I'm actually reading there's a great book I'm reading right now about the making of The Godfather.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's so interesting. But
what's the name of it? Do you happen to remember?
Yeah, it's called Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli. It's a great, I read mostly nonfiction, and that's fantastic. It doesn't disappoint. So pick a page between 1 and 400.
63.
Okay. And then a sentence between, say, 1 and 10.
Oh, I don't know. Sentence 3.
Okay.
And hold on a sec. So you say the sentence, and then I say what happens next, and then you say a sentence. We go back. And
exactly.
Forth?
And it doesn't have. It could be 1 sentence, 2, 3, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then in a couple minutes, I'll call it a day. Okay. All right. So they're referencing the Don in this. So like Don Corleone. But you can go anywhere you want with this. The Don knew he would not live to see that glorious day, but what a world it would be for his children.
Wow.
That's a little heady.
Can you read that again?
How about we just do the first part of that sentence? The Don knew he would not live to see that glorious day.
So he decided to take the ultimate step, Carter.
He got out of his bed and he could see a thin trail of dust motes floating, and it just made him think of death. All that sloughed skin hanging in the air. He looked over to his nightstand where half a bottle of whiskey still was placed, and he chastised himself for not finishing it all the night before.
Then he asked himself, why are all these skin motes in the air? Didn't I take care of that prostitute weeks ago? Think I'll finish off the whiskey, and then things will be clearer tomorrow.
He grabbed the bottle, walked into the living room, took a long slug straight from the mouth. It burned, but not as much as he wished it would. Maria was cleaning in the kitchen. Why is it so goddamn filthy in here? He barked at her.
Because you're a dirty pig of a human being, you piece of shit. And then he had to ask himself, is she why their skin most no? Then he asked himself, what is it about women? I love them and I hate them. And then he shot her.
All right, we're calling it right there. That's the end of the
There
story. Wow. Maria mouthed off once in her life.
Yeah, well, the Dawn.
And she got taken out by the Dawn.
That's right.
Wow. He was really in a pissy mood, wasn't he?
Pissy. Yeah.
So I'm excited for you.
Not drunk.
I'm excited for your for Girl in Ice. That's your books have very cold titles that make me kind of chilly in general. The River at Night also. Maybe not so much Into the Jungle.
Into the Jungle. A different kind of fear.
When does it come out?
Girl in Ice comes out in 5 days, March 1st.
Is it so? What is your experience like? Does each launch is it the same level of excitement, or you're like, okay, I'm kind of getting used to what these things are about, or it's just like it's overwhelming each time?
I'll never get used to it.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm it's terrifying putting your work out into the world. It is. Writing a novel is an act of love, and like love, you're exposing yourself to everything. I mean, I love it. And just quickly say, I mean, I have something like 48 events. I counted.
Wow.
Blogs, in person, virtual, traveling, thing. Which is more than I've ever had. But I think it was Stephen King who said it best. He was interviewed and he was asked the same question. How do you feel when you publish a book? And this is a very politically incorrect thing he said, but he said, I feel like I'm completely naked and I'm running through 2 sets of Indians who have their tomahawks ready to throw at my head.
Yeah, that kind of encapsulates it.
It kind of is it. We could do a whole show on reviews, on how to deal with
events. Yeah, like just
events.
Like that's like I get excited about my launch event. Like if there's an in-person launch, and I get so excited, and I get them like, oh, nobody fucking cares. Like, like this is stupid.
They just want to drink. It's like looking forward to your birthday. It's like, why was I looking forward to my birthday? It's a dumb day. It's just dumb.
I get immediately down on myself.
How is that good? It's like it's like the day after Christmas. You feel sort of dirty.
Right. And then you're like, oh, now I gotta wait a whole nother year for the next one.
I know. What am I, a little kid? Why was I so excited? It's like weird.
Congratulations on the release. That's very exciting. And I appreciate you spending a little time with me today. You're a delight.
Fun.
I really had fun talking to you.
Let's do it again next time.
Are you going to be at Thriller Fest or BoucherCon or doing any of those?
I'm doing an event at Queen's University in Charlotte, which is really an honor. And then I'm just really going to the Tucson Festival of Books.
Awesome.
I haven't heard about anything else yet, so
okay.
I'm open. I guess.
Enjoy your travel and stay healthy.
Thank you.
And revel in your all that success.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Carter.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
That was my conversation with Erica. I told you she was funny. I mentioned that at the beginning of the episode that she was funny as shit. And see, I told you she's funny as shit. We had a really good time talking. If you want to know more about her tremendous books, and her most recent one is Girl in Ice, you can go to her website, which is ericaferencik.com, FERENCIK. If you want to know more about me, sign up for my newsletter, see my appearances, or know more about my upcoming book, just go to carterwilson.com. Hey, everyone, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen or to view this today. Make sure to subscribe and like and comments and all that kind of stuff. I will respond. That's it for now. More episodes coming out soon. In the meantime, take care.